It was supposed to be a safe haven for plus-sized women. It was supposed to be a place a woman could go and be around people that looked like her, a place she could go to celebrate her body, feel like she was a part of a group, not just sitting on the sidelines being ignored or judged. But this house, this paradise in Las Vegas, Nevada, was either the safest place a woman could land or the most dangerous. And the most unsettling part of all this is that there are women on both sides. Some that say it is that beautiful body positive utopia, and others claim that it's a dangerous place ran by a dangerous man. So today we are going to discuss how Paradise was built, who it targeted and pulled in, what the women say happened, and the death that finally forced cameras to show up at their front door. And of course, we cannot leave out the man at the center of this, who has never been charged with a crime and denies every allegation that I will be talking about in this video. And by the end of this video, I am sure you will be left wondering, why are the gates to paradise still open? So sit back, relax, and take a deep breath. It's time to let the fresh air in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name is Erin, and I'm fascinated by all things cults, true crime, and unique spiritual practices, as well as controversial topics. So I post a video or two about one of these things, whatever I find intriguing or interesting, or am just curious to learn more about on my channel every single week. So if you are into that sort of thing, then please join me here and subscribe to the channel. Now, I have a couple of disclaimers going into this video. The first is a legal one. Everything I am sharing in this video is alleged. A lot of this information has been sourced from the docu-series I just watched on HBO called Big Girls Wanted: Escaping Paradise. And this docuseries was super fascinating because not only do we hear from survivors, we also see the leader himself get interviewed, which there have been cameras that kind of get into the underbellies of cults and insidious, dangerous groups before, but I haven't seen a documentary series that has so successfully interviewed people from all lenses of one situation. But I'm sure if you, like me, the second that man opened his mouth, you were like, "Mm, no, thank you." But I do just have to reiterate, everything I discuss here is an allegation. It has not been proven. No one has been convicted of a crime in this particular situation, and a lot of this is going to be my opinion. The second disclaimer I want to share: I cannot sit here and pretend that I know what it's like to be a plus-size woman living in what seems to be a skinny-obsessed world. But that's why I think this documentary is so impactful, because you really get to hear the lived experience of plus-size women. And so I really encourage you, if you haven't seen this docuseries already, please go watch it. It's fantastic. And much like every dangerous group I cover, there is always a very similar target. There is a vulnerability that the leader exploits. And this particular vulnerability is the fact that these women were all plus sized. Many of the women in the documentary shared that they constantly felt either invisible or judged or fetishized or otherwise made to feel like the other. So that in particular would be the vulnerability that this man was preying upon for his own gross, perverse personal gain. Now, like all dangerous groups and all dangerous cults, it always looks like something positive on the outside, right? People don't just go in knowing something is a cult. They go in thinking that they're going to get something positive from the experience. So, if you are someone who feels like you're kind of living on the fringe of society and you don't feel accepted for who you are, you're going to seek out a space that is going to be inclusive of you. And for the women in this particular group, they found paradise because they thought they were going to be celebrated, worshiped, accepted for who they are, and not feel like the other. So I just want to put that out there because it can be very sensationalized when we talk about these topics. And I want to take this opportunity to encourage us all to just be kinder to each other no matter what you look like, and B, know that this was a specific vulnerability that was actually feeding into a specific fetish that we are going to learn about today. So, with all that said, the disclaimers are finally over. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's jump into it. The women who went to Paradise weren't foolish and they weren't weak and they weren't desperate. They just wanted what every other human wants, to be wanted back. They were responding to a genuine wound that our culture inflicts on purpose and then refuses to treat. The demand for a place like Paradise existed long before Paradise did. Somebody just had to notice that vulnerability and decide what to do with it. And as you watch this video and you catch yourself thinking, well, how could they not see it? I just want you to swap that question and picture the thing that you have been most starved of in your life, and then picture someone offering you exactly that in abundance on the very first day you meet them. You wouldn't be running a background check. You would be crying with relief. The right response to a person who finally feels loved is not suspicion, it's joy. And the fact that joy can be weaponized isn't a failing of the people who felt it, it's the cruelty of whoever built the weapon. So let's start with how every cult analyzation starts. And that's with trying to understand the person at the center of it all. And this man's name is Stefan Wilhelmy. He was born and raised in Berlin and came to the United States in 2004 and was settled in Las Vegas by 2011. By his own account, he's a tech guy. He runs a business out of his home doing electronics and software. And he's never been shy about one particular thing. He is, in his own words, a man who loves bigger women, openly, enthusiastically. And that's not a detail I'm sneaking in, that's literally the thing he leads with himself. So in 2020, when COVID hit and the whole world went inside and online, he started something called Pearadise. The name is a play on words. It's a pear shape, much like the shape of the physique he prefers. And it began as an online community, a self described safe space for plus size women to find connection, confidence, and acceptance during the loneliest stretch of time a lot of people have ever lived through. And the timing, when you think about it, was almost perfect. I mean, isolation was everywhere, and then there was this warm room full of people who all invited you to join them. I mean, this page just took off. We're talking nearly 250,000 followers on TikTok. And the content was on its face exactly what it claimed to be. Dance videos, body positive messages, women being loud and joyful and unashamed in bodies they'd been taught to hide. So, for a lot of viewers, that was genuinely the first time they'd seen women who looked like them being celebrated instead of made into some punchline. So then it jumps off the screen and into the physical world. Stefan would set up a real place, a 6-bedroom mansion in Las Vegas, customized for larger bodies. And the details here are actually kind of touching, which is part of what makes all of this so hard. He made reinforced furniture that wouldn't break, railings built into the pool and hot tub so getting in and out was easy. And it was a space that was designed so that nobody had to feel like the world wasn't made for them. So, this meant a lot for women who maybe felt like they didn't really have a place, not even a physical place to sit in public. Now, I feel like love bombing has become this buzzword that people may not even really recognize all of the different ways it can show up because it's not just in words of affirmation, it can also be in action. And this was a form of love bombing. I mean, he just flooded these women with attention and adoration right at the start, gave them comfortable places to stay, to sit, provided them food, provided them fun. I mean, he was treating them like the aforementioned goddesses that they finally got to feel like they were. And the cruel mechanics of love bombing is the fact that it isn't dangerous in spite of feeling wonderful. It's dangerous because it feels wonderful. That flood of joy is the point. It overwhelms all of your judgment with sheer relief and it runs up an enormous debt in your chest. Look at how much they've given me. How could I doubt them? And it just sets this baseline of bliss that you will later twist yourself in knots trying to get back. And the thing is, recognizing love bombing as a tactic never means that the person who is under the victim of it is foolish or melting under it. Love bombing literally works on everyone because it is engineered to. Even if you think that you are impervious to love bombing, it can happen to you. And it works best of all on a person who's been starved of the precise thing it floods them with. A plus size woman who spent a lifetime being told in 1,000 tiny ways that she is unlovable isn't gullible for blooming the first time someone finally pours on the sun. I mean, she's human. The engineering is the crime here, not the blooming. And women came from all over the country, some just to visit, some to move in, and by every account, including from women who later turned against this place, those first days would feel like a genuine homecoming. They described feeling attractive, desired even, for the first time in their lives. So I want to be very fair and clear. At the entrance, Paradise delivered on their brochure. That's exactly why this whole thing worked. And as for recruiting these people to come visit him, Stefan knew how to present himself, even though when I see these videos, I'm like, this guy is a creep, in my opinion. There's just something about him that feels disingenuine. He just gives me this bad taste in my mouth. And obviously, I saw the whole documentary and I watched women cry over what he had done to them. So that's probably part of why I have this like visceral, disgusted feeling when I see him because he's still posting content. But he does try, at least, to present himself as disarming and worth understanding. He doesn't sulk, he doesn't hide what he is. He says very openly and cheerfully on camera, I love fat women. I think they're beautiful. I want to give them a place to feel that. And I think it's also rare to hear men share that because there is such a stigma on what an attractive woman should look like to the male gaze anyway. So that openness is already very disarming. It's kind of hard to be suspicious of a man who just seems to have nothing to hide. But here's the engine humming underneath the whole thing, and you have to see it to understand everything that follows. Every one of those joyful TikToks was content. The house wasn't just a home, it was a set. There were cameras throughout it, broadcasting to followers. And an algorithm doesn't reward safe and healthy, it rewards more attention, more spectacle, more of whatever keeps the feed scrolling. So, what was it actually like to live in this house? And this is where it really stops being a simple answer because it genuinely depends on who you ask. The documentary leans onto that purpose. It doesn't hand you a tidy villain, it hands you a house full of women whose stories flatly contradict each other and asks you to sit in the discomfort. So, I'm gonna have to do the same to you. Sorry in advance. And then you can kind of form your own opinion, and I will be honestly sharing my opinion throughout. In my last video, someone was like, "You kind of have an attitude when you talk about this stuff." And I was like, absolutely, I do. The people who do these things are awful, and I want to take down every cult leader I can. So, yeah, I have a bit of an attitude. Anyways, for the new arrival, those early weeks could be absolutely intoxicating. I mean, you're surrounded by other women who just get it. And yeah, you're being filmed, but it feels more like being seen, not being exploited yet. You're a part of something with 250,000 people cheering it on. And some women have described this period as the happiest, most confident they've ever been in their entire lives. And that's not naivete, that's a real human need being met finally. But let's talk about those cameras for a second, because being filmed feels like being seen is exactly the kind of sentence that should make you slow down and start to think. Because that house, by the TikTok accounts and the footage, they all had cameras running and content going out all of the time. So if you flip it around to the resident side, your home is also a broadcast. It's like you're in this self produced reality show. Your friendships are also a product. And that line between, oh yeah, we're hanging out and we're shooting content, it doesn't just blur, it practically dissolves. And when your lowest days and your most private businesses are always unfolding inside a thing that is always performing for some audience on some level, you kind of lose something most of us never think about because we've always had it: a backstage, a place to not be on. Paradise, by design, didn't have a backstage. And think about what the content itself quietly demands. It demands that the affirmation that pulled these women in is also the product that has to keep performing. The audience that makes you feel adored is the same audience whose attention has to be fed to keep the whole machine running. It's like this weird symbiotic relationship. They're like codependent on each other. So the love and the labor collapse into the same act, and you genuinely can't tell anymore where the real relationship ends and the content begins. So for a community whose entire existence is a broadcast, that confusion isn't a bug, it's pretty much its operating system. But if we look at the structure of it all for a second, because this is the part that should make the hair on the back of your neck kind of prickle, in a lot of these arrangements, the house is giving you everything at once, just like a commune. You have a place to live, you have your friends, you have your sense of belonging, you have food, you're taken care of, you're having fun, you're being celebrated. And then increasingly through the content and the platforms that all attaches to it, it becomes a part of your income. So now what happens to a person when there is one singular place that becomes the source of all of those things simultaneously? I'll tell you what happens, because it's the same mechanism in every single high control group I've ever covered on this channel. When one single place owns your housing, your money, your friendships, your identity all at once, the cost of leaving stops being, oh, I can find a new apartment. It becomes, I will lose my entire life and everyone in it if I leave. You don't need locks on the doors when the exit itself is punishment. Nobody has to trap you. The structure of this organization, this house, this commune, does it for them. And former members say that's exactly where the cracks started to show. That the warmth at the front door had conditions attached the deeper you went in. That the celebration came with an unspoken bill. So we're going to step inside the day-to-day, because the cracks didn't look like cracks at first. They looked like a house with a new culture. So this is a handful of women all living under one roof with the man who owns it, the man who pays for it, the man whose attention the whole place quietly orbits. They have group dinners, pool days, streams, board games, and on camera it reads as a warm, fuzzy family. But former members described a more subtle system underneath all that warmth, a sense of who was in favor and who wasn't, who got the glow of his attention this week and who'd gone a little cold. And in a house where his attention is also your validation, also your standing, and also tied up with the roof over your head, it all matters enormously. You find yourself reading the room, adjusting, and wanting to be back in the warmth. Now, I want to handle this part with real care, because I've always said that I'm always inclined to believe a woman who has an allegation. But I think it's pretty striking when there are multiple women all claiming almost the exact same thing happened to them, when one man is at the center of all of this misbehavior. And of course, he's going to deny all of that behavior. So let's get into this piece of it now. And just in case you need a bit of a trigger warning, there is going to be SA discussed here. Now, several former members describe this unspoken rule that was never posted, it was never said out loud, it was just silently understood that being intimate with the founder, Stefan, was part of this deal. Of course, it wasn't a written requirement. It was more like the unstated rent underneath the free room. The understanding, as they describe it, is that real belonging here, if you wanted to be in Stefan's inner circle, as he called it all ran around him. It all circled around him. And now I'm trying to be more careful with my language just because of the legalities of it. And of course, Stefan is going to deny framing anything as a requirement at all. But if you're calling a few of the women your inner circle when you're leading a group of women who you targeted and recruited from the internet by preying upon the thing they're most vulnerable about, well, if it walks like a cult leader and talks like a cult leader, it's probably a cult leader. And just because the rule isn't said and nothing is forced, consent cannot exist if fear is in the room. Coercion doesn't leave fingerprints because it never even had to touch you. It never had to force your hand. Now, Stefan's going to deny all of this, right? His position is that he never required intimacy, never traded belonging for it, and that the relationships in the house were between consenting adults who wanted to be there. He loves to claim that because they may have exchanged some flirtatious sexual messages prior to the encounter that they had consented. Which, friendly reminder, just because you flirt with someone doesn't mean that they're entitled to your body. Just so everyone is clear here. I mean, in this situation, one woman's "I never required it" and another woman's "I never felt I could say no" are not really describing two different things. Sometimes they're describing the same house from two ends of the power that was running through it. One former member's line about the whole place has really stuck with me since I first heard it, and that's this promise that you'd be worshipped like a goddess. And the part they leave out is the price of that. But before we jump into all of that, there is somebody I have to introduce you to if you haven't seen the documentary. And her name was Cassidy. Everyone called her Kass. Online, she went by Kass the Blast. And from what you can see of her, the name fit. She was from Sacramento. She was funny. She was magnetic. She was already a plus-size content creator building an audience before Pearadise was ever a thing. She was 25 when this started. And here's how she came in according to the documentary. During the pandemic, Kass saw a post from Stefan, him putting out the call essentially that he wanted to talk to women who were fat and confident. And Kass, who was exactly that, messaged him. No hesitation. I mean, why would there be? It read like an invitation into a warm room. One thing led to another, and then he invited her to the Las Vegas house. And Kass kind of became something specific in this ecosystem within the home. She became his girlfriend. Other women would stay at the house, some briefly, some long term, but Kass would share his room. And I'll tell you, nothing is going to disarm someone and make them feel less like this dude is really creepy trying to surround himself with a bunch of women than a girlfriend on his arm telling all those women, "It's okay, he's my boyfriend, he's with me, we just want to create this like amazing badass community of women to be celebrated." So in my opinion, she was playing a very specific part in Stefan's scheme. He knew exactly what he was doing by having her on his arm. He was able, in my opinion, to manipulate her so that she could essentially be the pawn. Oh, she's safe. You'll be safe coming here. And people are going to trust her. She is the example of the type of woman they want to become. And now, by the show's account, this was an open arrangement, and she was a willing and knowing participant in it. There wasn't jealousy because the rule ran both ways. She was also making a living the way a lot of creators do, monetizing attention online, including on fetish and kink sites, fulfilling paying requests. And I'm trying to state that very plainly without judgment because Cass was an adult making her own choices about her own life and her own body, and that matters. And I'm laying all that out clearly for a reason because it would be very lazy to turn Cass into either a pure victim with no agency or a cautionary tale about that lifestyle. She wasn't either. She was a grown woman who walked in with her eyes open, who found something she wanted there, and who was, the people around her say, genuinely loved. So keep all of that true in your head at once. Because here's the hard question the story focuses on, and I am not going to even pretend to say that there's a clear answer, is where exactly is the line between a fully autonomous choice and a total setup? When a grown woman freely says yes, but the only other options she's ever been offered were built by someone who is profiting off of her for saying yes, how free is that yes? How free is she truly when her entire life has been invested into this place, into this man, and he essentially is holding all of the cards? It goes back to that unspoken rule. If you live in this house, you are sleeping with the owner of it. If you live in this house, you are also making food for the collective. If you live in this house, you also need to provide free unpaid labor into his chip business so he can sell this contraption to rich people who have whatever Lamborghini or fancy car so that they can keep driving while they flip the top on and off of their vehicle. Cool, man, you're pretty smart, but you're also an a-hole. But this is what it was like living inside there. There was this unspoken rule. Oh, thank you for taking me in. Do you need me to do free labor for you and your company so you can continue to make money to take care of all of us? So, although Cass is a beautiful woman, fully capable of making all of her own choices, I cannot help but wonder if she was not encouraged to make her money by fetishizing herself, if she would have done that without Stefan's push into it, without the exposure that he provided her into the world of the feeder community. So, what is feederism? Feederism is a fetish. In the broadest of terms, it involves people, usually called feeders, who are sexually drawn to larger bodies and, in some expression of it, are aroused by the act of encouraging weight gain. In more extreme terms, they can become so aroused by the control they have over someone's weight by making them so large that they have troubles getting out of bed. It could be viewed as a control mechanism to make someone so big, so sick, they're incapable of making any decisions for themselves, let alone incapable of leaving. Additionally, and it gets even darker here, there are some feeders who are also aroused by a woman eating herself to death. So, it really depends on the level and the intensity of the fetish. So, between consenting adults who both fully want it and understand all of the risks, it is something that can obviously be a healthy form of lovemaking between whatever consenting adults want to do in the privacy of their own space. But when that dynamic gets layered on top of everything we just talked about, the marginalization, the dependency, the cameras, the bundled life, it gets very, very dark. So there is that level where it can be consensual, it can be a curiosity, but there is also the other side of the spectrum, just like with any fetish, where it can go way too far. And if both people are not fully aware and understanding of the fetish and what it is, then it is point blank, period, not consensual. Both parties need to be well informed and understand all of the implications when they are going into exercising any fetish. So, the reason it's so important to understand all of that is because it provides context for what former members allege. They say that underneath this body positive branding, Paradise basically functioned for some of them as a feeder fantasy, that the celebration of their bodies came with a direction it was supposed to move, that they were not celebrated, they were fetishized, that he would have them step on a scale in front of him and then encourage them to get heavier than 500 pounds. Some women feel like they had been groomed into becoming feeders because he was so about them continuing to gain weight. He is a self-proclaimed feeder. Not all of the women who went into his house understood what this fetish was or that he even had it. All of a sudden, there was this pressure to gain weight, and that the encouragement they'd come for had kind of changed into something that was actually serving someone else's sexual appetite, sometimes at the expense of their health. That is not consensual. That is grooming. These women, often young women, because he said to Kass that she was aging out at 27 years old and he's in his 40s, for goodness sake. These are young, impressionable women who may have not ever heard of any sort of fetish. They might not have any sexual experience at all. And all of a sudden, they are unknowingly feeding into this man's sexual fantasies. That is literally called grooming. And grooming normalizes bad behavior. It's going to normalize the fetish, and it could end up being too late for some women. Once they're exposed to it, they're celebrated for it, it becomes a part of their lifestyle, their routine, and it just continues until, in Kass's case, it ends up being too late. Now, one former member described the founder's underlying wish in brutal terms, that what he really wanted was a rotating collection of fat women he could choose from day to day. I mean, that was her characterization. But he, of course, rejects that completely. And that's part of what's so insidious of this behavior, is because there wasn't a single moment that you could, circle and label, this is the crime that was committed, because nobody was handing anyone else a contract. Each little step is tiny and part of the broader coercive control that is starting to be slowly implemented. Each step is deniable. It was a compliment. It was a joke. It was your idea, wasn't it? And all around you are the other women treating the whole thing as completely normal, seemingly, or maybe secretly feeling a little uncomfortable too. But that is still the most powerful permission there was here. Because if everyone else seems happy and is enjoying living this way, then surely the problem would be your hesitation, not the place where everybody else seems happy. And every single time you go along with it, that validation of you're so beautiful, more of you to love, all of that comes flooding right back. So you don't even feel pushed. You feel led, one small reward at a time, to a place that you would have turned the car around and fled if anyone had showed it to you on day one. And the allegations go even further. Multiple former residents allege that they were essayed by Stefan or by others in the house. And that's on top of this unspoken rule dynamic that we walked through with the sense of intimacy with him that was the real rent underneath the free room. They would describe it as a touch here, a smack on the behind there, a strange comment from him that wasn't exactly wanted. It was late night skinny dipping in the hot tub where if you happened to be the last woman standing, Stefan would do essentially whatever he wanted to you without consent. And what's really heartbreaking but also eye-opening in this docuseries is it really examines that moment of like fight, flight, or freeze, kind of, where multiple women who experienced that he had touched them inappropriately or slipped his hand somewhere he shouldn't and they didn't know what to do, or just started doing things to them in the hot tub. Several of the women were just like, I just laid there. I didn't know how to respond. They froze. It was a trauma response. And you'll never know how you're going to react to something like that happening to you until you're in it. I think we all want to think we'd fight it off, we'd all run, but sometimes the trauma response is to freeze. You just don't know what to do because you're so in shock that something this traumatic is happening to you. And multiple women shared this. It seems like getting to hot tub time at one of the parties was when he would kind of seek out who the victim was going to be. And it's really, really heartbreaking seeing and hearing some of the women share their stories. And then on the flip side, it's incredibly aggravating to listen to Stefan deny all of it, put out all of his, proof that he didn't do it. And I really want to break down his website with you guys. I'm thinking about going live next week or I guess this upcoming week for when you're watching this. And if you want me to do that, please let me know, because I'm just like, this guy is effing ridiculous trying to claim that because he flirted with girls or like got them on video going naked in his hot tub, that means that they wanted to sleep with him. Like, are you crazy, dude? Are you crazy? You're a smart man, apparently, because you created whatever the contraption is to like make the top go up and down. Good job, buddy. But you're an idiot, okay? In my opinion, all right? But he's going to continue saying he didn't do anything, that Paradise is a body positive space, that he just loves plus size women. There's nothing sinister about it, and that everyone there has been there of their own free will. So he's not been criminally charged with anything. But what if we just decided to take the most generous version and give Stefan the benefit of the doubt, okay? Let's pretend that, yeah, everybody said yes. The women had come in marginalized and starved for acceptance. The place held their housing, their friendships, their income, their sense of being wanted. So in a setup like that, yes doesn't really become a clean word anymore. Consent isn't just about the moment someone nods. It's about whether the person had any real freedom to say no. And that's the rot that this story sits on, regardless of which version that you decide to believe. So I want to make that very, very concrete, because freedom to say no sounds abstract until you're the one inside of it. So just picture that you've moved across the country. This house is now your home, your friend group, your entire social world, and the source of your income. And the person who controls all of that turns his attention to you in a way that you didn't exactly sign up for. What does no cost you in that moment? Not just awkwardness and uncomfortability. It costs you your housing, your income, your chosen family. This is the first place you've ever felt beautiful. So when no has that high of a price tag, the yes that avoids paying that is not the same thing as saying yes and actually wanting it. It's survival. And that's the whole engine of coercive control. It doesn't even need to be physically forced. And this is why exactly the law is such a clumsy tool for this situation, because coercion that works through structure instead of force doesn't really leave the kind of evidence that a courtroom is going to build weight on. There's not a bruise. There's a text that says yes. The pressure lives in the architecture, in the math of what leaving would cost. And architecture doesn't show up on a witness stand, which means a setup can be deeply and genuinely harmful and still just sit outside the reach of the one mechanism that we've got for calling something a crime. But when women started actually leaving, and not just women staying for a couple of days, getting creepy vibes and booking it, but his actual girlfriend, Kass, left in 2022. She parted ways with Stefan and left the Pearadise house. She moved to New York for a while and then to NOLA. But here's the thing about a place that wraps itself around your entire identity. Leaving the building isn't necessarily the same thing as leaving the orbit. So she stayed in contact and she visited, and she kept on building her career online, on social media, and on the fetish sites where the feeder dynamic she'd been living wasn't just a phase she'd walked away from. It had become the engine of her income and her public self. So over the next couple of years, her health declined drastically. She developed some serious problems with her breathing and getting around. Her mobility had slipped away. And the thing she'd been sold as celebration was by the end costing her the basic functioning of her body. And she would pass away in 2024 when she was just 29. 29 years old. A woman who went looking for the simplest thing in the world, to just be accepted in the body she had, and who found a place that accepted her right up until that acceptance had a direction and a price. It was a cost her body not pay. Kass had such a massive impact on the plus size community and just had a beautiful, bright soul. It was very clear watching the documentary that it was absolutely heartbreaking to everyone who knew her to know what happened to her when she was just wanting to be accepted and found herself into this fetish lifestyle. And it's absolutely heartbreaking to hear her friends and loved ones recount the experience of being told of her passing. So I can only hope that her friends and family have found healing and that people remember her as the woman she was, a woman who loved uplifting and supporting other women. And she's also not the only one. The documentary also follows a woman named Xiomara, an influencer pulled into the same feeder world who suffered a health crisis so severe it became life-threatening. And it doesn't just stop there. A woman who had been SA'd by him ended up having twins by him, and he continued to claim that he was not the father. He also basically tried to sneak abortion pills into her drinks and food because he didn't want the kids. And this man has the audacity in the documentary to claim to be the victim and say, well, she had kids against my will. How do you think that feels? I'm sorry, sir. What the heck is wrong with you? And with this particular woman, she did go back because she needed the resources that he had. I think that people are super, super judgmental of mothers who go back to somebody that essayed them or otherwise abused them. But if you really put yourself into the mental space that a lot of these women found themselves in, it's going to be a lot easier to rationalize staying when you have no income, no house over your head. You might not have a close family nearby. All of a sudden you find yourself with kids, but you have someone who has a whole collection of people who can help you with your child. Even if he essayed you, you might be inclined to stay. So I really think it's important to just put ourselves in that position and really try to be empathetic to these situations instead of just judge them. So why doesn't this story end here? Well, Paradise still exists, and Stefan Wilhelmy has not been charged with the crime. It's not for coercion, not for anything connected to these allegations. As of right now, there is no criminal case. He remains, by every available account, exactly where he was, living in that Las Vegas mansion running Paradise. And when the accusations started spreading online, he filed defamation lawsuits against 5 former members who'd spoken out. So if we think about what that does strategically, completely apart from whether or not he'd ever win, he's essentially trying to make speaking out expensive. You make the next woman who's thinking about going public picture a court summons instead of share her story and get support. Now, luckily, that suit was completely thrown out. The court did not let it stand, but the message it sent to anyone still inside, anyone still deciding whether to talk, well, maybe don't because you'll get sued. Now, as for Stefan himself, he hasn't gone quiet. He hasn't softened. After the documentary dropped, he stayed active online, posting and defending the community and openly mocking the whole premise of the film. The title's about escaping paradise. He throws that word back, insisting that nobody ever needed to escape anything, that every woman there stayed because she wanted to. That's his position, stated loudly and repeatedly. In his telling, he is a misunderstood man who loves and celebrates women the world rejected, and he's just being punished for it. Now, in the documentary, at one point, a producer just asks him flat out, "Are you a dangerous man?" This is not a man who believes he did anything wrong. He answered no. He is not hiding. He is, by all appearances, completely convinced that what he's built is good, and that the women calling it a trap are mistaken or bitter or lying. That he's allowed to coerce people to engage in his fetish with him, even though they have no understanding of what that means. So the fact that this thing is still running, that women are afraid to speak out, it forces a very hard question. What do you do about harm that may never fit neatly inside a criminal charge? Because if the only tool we've got are handcuffs, then everything that happens is going to be in the gray zone. The consent that was technically not given just continues in plain sight with cameras rolling. And the thing is, new women are still arriving. They're still looking for the exact same thing that the first women came for. So why does it stay open? And the answer isn't really about one man in a mansion. It's about everything standing behind him. The platforms, a community, engagement, a house full of marginalized women being celebrated on camera is engagement gold. The algorithm doesn't ask if something is healthy. It asks if you'll keep watching, and people keep watching. And the feeder world doesn't hide in some dark corner of the internet. It runs on mainstream platforms and monetization tools in the open, with essentially nobody asking whether a fantasy that can end in a hospital should have any guardrails at all. There's real money in it, flowing to a lot of hands. And money that flows that freely does not go looking for a conscience. But I do think it's very important as we try to navigate the legal waters of a situation like this and educate and protect as many women as possible to encourage them to avoid men like Stefan and obviously Stefan himself. I want to leave you with a little bit more about Kass, a funny, magnetic woman from Sacramento who wanted the same uncomplicated thing most of us want, to be wanted exactly for who she was. She deserved a world that gave that to her without a price tag attached to it or without coercion hanging over her head. She deserved to make it past 29. The least we can do is try to tell this story in a way that asks the right questions. Not what's wrong with the women who went, but what's wrong with all of us that a place like this had such a long line at the door. We have to be better and we have to be more accepting of others. Now, if you found yourself having some difficult thoughts throughout this video, I am definitely not a stranger to having a complicated relationship with my own body and with food itself. I'm going to leave some resources down in the pinned comment below if you do find yourself in need. I think it's vastly important to empathize with people who are in a different position than ourselves. So if you need any of those resources, please check them out below. Thank you all so much for being here today. I know this is a tough one, and I tried to handle it as delicately as I can. However, if there's anything I missed or a nuance I didn't quite explain well enough, please provide your insight in the comments down below. I would really appreciate that. And just keep it respectful, please. I always want the comment section to be a place where, if there is discourse, it's respectful of everybody. And especially with topics like this, I just really want us to be careful of who can end up seeing your comment. And anything that's disparaging against any of these women will be removed as soon as I see it. So thank you guys so much. Please take care of yourself. Stay safe out there. Always ask questions and always stay skeptical. I'll see you in my next video soon. Bye.